huge earthquake followed by tidal waves in the Indian Ocean has caused devastation from Indonesia to Thailand and as far west as Sri Lanka and India.
Before I thought I understood the world operated in a certain way. I used to know when I was taking risks, but when something so terrible came along without any warning, the rules had changed.
It was a lottery. Some people won and some people didn't.
It taught me the most important lesson, that nature's in charge.
We had brought my son to the other side of the world. Dead or alive, we couldn't leave him there.
When we're born, we're given a name. We carry that our entire lives. It becomes a central piece of who we are. And when that is stripped from us, it is so fundamentally dehumanising that all cultures seem to agree we need to bring that identity back.
For many tourists in southern Thailand, this was a paradise. Not anymore. The death toll is now rising as the terrible picture of damage emerges.
The Department of Foreign Affairs says 800 Australians believed to have been in Phuket in Thailand have yet to be accounted for.
On the 27th of December at about 1800 hours or thereabouts, I received a phone call from headquarters advising that there'd been a major incident in Thailand.
I contacted the AFP in Canberra and I said, look, it's my gut feeling that we're going to become heavily involved in this.
We had a fully equipped team ready to depart within 24 hours. It constituted police forensic specialists, forensic dentists, fingerprint experts, and all the equipment that they would require to set up a mortuary, the post-mortem work in the field. At that stage, it was believed there were 300 deceased persons on a beach in Phuket.
Suddenly I realized there is no noise anymore. There is no birds, no dogs. I realized something was wrong. Took my daughter, take my wife, and run away without seeing anything.
We'd probably been kayaking for around 10-15 minutes at that point. We hired 2 kayaks, one for Matt, my boyfriend, and me, and then my mum and Alice were in the other kayak. No one else around, calm. I couldn't believe how beautiful it was. Took a photo of my mum and sister. As I started to lower my camera, something just felt different. It was a ridge of white, and it was moving. And it just looked so wrong. Didn't know what to do. It was just a moment of absolute stunned silence and disbelief. None of us screamed, none of us cried. It hit us.
water. She was only 6 months, and I ran away from it. And I ran, I don't know, not much, like 100 meters, not much. And suddenly I feel like I've got something in my back, something huge. And I turn and I see like this wall, black wall, 5 meters high. And it was the wave. The current became really strong, but after 1 second I lost my daughter. She knows she was going. I couldn't see her eyes. We saw each other and I saw she was scared because she realized something was wrong because I didn't hold her anymore and she was in the water and we see, and that's the last time I saw her. Suddenly I heard my wife screaming, where is she, where is she? Because she saw I lost her. So I just grabbed her and she was screaming. I think when she realized we lost our baby, she decided to die at this moment. Because I tried to hold her and I put her on the trees, but she didn't hold the trees. She was like, she wanted to leave it. And after a while, I lost her hand.
I don't know how long I was underwater for there. I had absolutely no control of my body. My head kept hitting the rock. My body was being thrown around, spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning, like a rag doll. I kept saying to myself, you're not going to die like this. Got quite angry. I was saying inside my head, there is absolutely no way you're going to die here. This is not going to happen. After a while, the water started to settle a bit around me and went quite still then, and I immediately put my arms up to swim up to the surface. When I emerged, I saw my mum and Alice and Matt all there together in a line in front of me. They didn't look well. They looked haunted. I couldn't quite believe it, but there was another wave, really, really close, coming really, really fast. I was pushed underwater again. This time when the water calmed, I came up to the surface and nobody was there. I swam around trying to find my family, trying to find Matt. My gaze fell on a body I instantly knew was my mum. I breathed into her mouth and could just hear gurgling, absolutely no response. As I was holding her, I was aware of something else in the water. Again, the same kind of feeling, and looked out and there was another wave coming towards us, and it was one of the hardest moments in my life. I couldn't get Mum out, but I had to just leave her.
ก็รู้สึกว่ามากกว่าที่คิดมากกว่าที่ไม่สามารถที่ทำได้สำเร็จเลยถ้าไม่ใช่ตำรวจออสเตรเลียมาช่วยแก้ปัญหาช่วยแนะนำช่วยให้ข้อมูลต่างๆแล้วก็แอชชัวร์เราว่าสิ่งที่เราทำสิ่งที่เราแฮนเดิลนั้นเราทำมาถูกต้องครับ
Within the region, Australia had developed something of a reputation around disaster victim identification, largely that it evolved from deployments to the Bali bombings in 2002.
ได้ขึ้นเฮลิคอปเตอร์บินตรวจเส้นทางรอบๆในจังหวัดภูเก็ตเนี่ยก็ถึงได้รู้สถานการณ์จริงๆว่า
General Noppadon was the go-to man, and he was the decision maker. He had the ear of government, and that was really important for us.
He advised us that the biggest scale of the problem was actually not in Phuket at all, was actually to the north. The losses were far greater, and that's where he would like the Australian team to deploy to.
As you're coming into Cowlack from the south, you come in through some mountainous countryside that's very close to the sea. There's like a bend in the road that goes down into Cowlack, and so you can see the whole of that district. And Yeah, just unbelievable.
Oh, I will never forget that first 24 hours in Thailand.
We could see fairly clearly that we were no longer talking about a disaster involving hundreds of deceased, that in fact that number was now going to definitely be in the thousands. And the extent of the disaster wasn't at one single location, but was rather affecting hundreds of kilometres of coastline.
It's one thing to see on the news a figure that says so many thousand have been killed. To appreciate that of those 1,000, you have to try and look at every individual one and try and give them a name.
This is an absolutely surreal environment on a scale that we'd never imagined. There had been no international disaster victim identification operation ever mounted on the scale that we were witnessing in Thailand. What would be our approach? How would we absolutely deal with this in any sort of sensible fashion? And actually questioning whether we could do it or not at all.
ก็ยังมีความรู้สึกว่าจะหาใครที่จะอยู่กับเราแล้วทำงานเป็นหมื่นคนเนี่ยเราจะทำยังไง How can I make sure that the Australian have the strong guts to help until to the end?
ลงไปดูที่ชายทะเลก็ผมก็ขับรถจักรยานไปดูที่สวนหน้าครับที่สะพานนั่นก็เห็นคลื่นลูกใหญ่มาขาวตอนนั้น12 ปีครับแต่รู้ว่าคือคลื่นนะครับไปบอกคนที่บ้านครับว่ามีอะไรไม่รู้กำลังเกิดครับเพื่อให้เขาหนีไปด้วยกับผมครับพ่อแม่ตาพ่อเฒ่าถึงก็ยายถึงก็ลุงอีก2 คนถึงก็น้อง3 เดือนกับ12 ปีถึงแค่หน้าปากซอยบ้านครับขับจักรยานหนีอย่างเดียวครับเพราะทำอะไรไม่ได้นะครับ
Shanti and Stu and I got up very early, about daylight, and went down to the dive shop and took a boat out to Koban Island.
My sister decided she wanted to hang out with my brother instead of going out with us.
They were gonna go swimming and play and just hang out at the beach.
We jumped in the water and immediately knew something was up. It was just, there was no fish. The water was just full of bubbles.
No fish. I don't know where they were. They were hiding.
And while we were eating lunch, the liveaboard, which is a big boat, moved up in the air and paused, and then it went down, and everybody on the boat went, "Whoa, what is that?" And then the dive master said, "Everybody get on the speedboat, we're going back to shore."
About a mile from the Thailand coast, we started to see these trails of debris in the water. First it was boards, and then there were palm trees and mattresses, all this stuff and we didn't know what.
They pulled in a few people who had been killed and then a few people who were injured. And the captain took as many people as he could, but he had to stop because the boat wasn't big enough to be carrying too many people. We went into shore from there, and the dive master said, when you get to shore, jump off the boat and run as fast as you can, as far as you can, as high as you can, because we don't know if another wave is coming.
I've never been that scared in my entire life. I remember having to pee, and I didn't even dare stop. I just peed while I was running. And you were stepping over bodies, and you were stepping over debris and people's belongings, and it looked like a bomb had gone off and just leveled everything on the beach.
I was thinking the kids were okay because this wasn't the beach they were on. And I just assumed they would be okay.
The further north we went, the larger the numbers of deceased that we witnessed. The bodies had been recovered and were then being taken to wats or temples.
You'd see bodies arrive in the back of utes. You'd see bodies arrive in dump trucks. You'd see bodies arrive in garbage trucks. Every time you turned around, you might start to clear or move 5 bodies, 5 or 10 more would arrive.
The Thais believed that the spirits of the deceased needed to rest in a holy place, which was the temples or wats where bodies had been taken.
Everyone afraid about the ghosts, the spirits of the dead. And I think they thought that's the place for them, is a temple.
Families began to arrive very early on in search of looking for their loved ones at the temples. I was their link into the forensic operation, their link into the Thais, and they were just hungry for information. And it was really challenging because all they wanted was to bring home the body of their loved ones, and it wasn't going to be quick.
And we'd spoken to Christian and Moy on Christmas Day, you know, the whole calling everybody, they'd called in, they were having a wonderful time in Thailand.
So he rang on Christmas Day, thanked me for the presents, and he said, by the way, you're going to become a grandfather. And I thought, oh dear. And I thought later, I probably should have sounded more excited than I did, but I'll make that up for him the next time I speak with him.
It was such a wonderful moment, and hearing that they'd found this incredible, beautiful place and were having such a wonderful time.
There's a terrible and developing story from Southeast Asia tonight with a
Hundreds
massive
of Australians missing in the tsunami-hit areas of Southeast Asia.
The ABC's Peter Lloyd now reports from the resort town of Phuket, which bore the brunt of the tsunami.
I think it was the morning of the 27th that we saw something on the news that something had happened in Phuket. We didn't even take much notice of it because we thought, oh, well, they're not in Phuket, they're somewhere else, they're in Khao Lak, and that's somewhere further north.
And I saw it on the front page of the paper that there'd been this massive tsunami. So I rang my daughter and said, look, I'm not familiar with this part of Thailand. Is this where Christian was staying? And she said, no, don't worry, I think he was around in the bay behind.
The tsunami toll is now reaching levels no heart or mind can truly comprehend.
Many of the worst affected areas still haven't been contacted or assessed. The quake...
Because we couldn't get hold of them, you know, we started to become increasingly worried, and then all their friends and all the family are starting to call us and call them, and nobody knew. So we have to go to Thailand, someone's got to go. Basically, we just all rallied together. Within 24 hours, we got people on planes. We pulled posters together.
It was my father calling me, and he told me he had seen on the news that something bad has happened in Thailand. But he told me not to worry because they're only talking about Phuket. And my girls were up in Khao Lak with my ex-husband, Johan. But as I didn't get contact from them, I started to get worried about if something had happened to them. We decided to go down to look for our family ourselves. My purpose with the trip was to go down and get them back to Sweden alive. I couldn't think in any other way. For me, they were alive. And actually, when we went on the plane, I felt a little bit, this is just stupid. Probably when we land in Thailand, I will have information that they are already back in Sweden.
There were Thai teams that had deployed from the Ministry of Public Health, and they were working on the deceased on the ground in terms of trying to conduct some process that would assist them in identification.
We had no experience. We have to work with only the volunteer. It's very difficult to work with the one who were not trained before. More than 60% in the Takua Pa temple, they were the foreigner, especially the Western. And for me, I think I had no experience about Europe or the American or the Australian.
So Dr. Porntip is a Kunying. She's recognised by the royal family, so she has enormous standing in Thailand. She had a great deal of gravitas and influence with the Thai people. And so she had set up her operation at Takua Pa, which was probably one of the largest DVI sites initially. Dr. Porntip was a strong believer in separating the Thai deceased from non-Thai deceased and running a separate process.
I'm afraid that the Thai team will do the wrong method of the identification, because we have no experience about the identification of the Caucasian. So that's why I decided to, split the foreigner and the Thai.
From her perspective, you could quickly identify whether someone was Thai or not, based on their physical appearance, based on their clothing.
We took a photograph of everybody. It's relatives of the death. They can look at the pictures, look at the shirt, the jewelry, and they can point out the number as an identification tag.
If you have a line of 20 people who've died, they may have looked quite different during life. But if you observe them after 1, 2, or 3 days of death, they will develop an appearance that is quite indistinguishable from each other, in the sense that they will all look bloated and green or black.
Trying to make a determination based on visual was impossible almost from the time I arrived on the 29th and started looking at deceased. It was a very rapid decomposition process that to continue to utilise that method was a facade. Even if you had early photographs of that deceased, how you could have confidence that that photograph was then definitely still that deceased and enable body release would to me be extremely high risk.
And so you realise that you have to use more scientific methods to distinguish them. So you have to look at various aspects of the body that are unique, of which, of course, the DNA is one, the fingerprints, the dental appearance.
In those early days of the disaster, there would have been hundreds of bodies released by different Thai groups operating at different sites to families who had believed they had identified a missing person.
We didn't know how many of those were correctly identified.
Because you don't make one error. If you release the wrong body, that body was a different identity. You then immediately create a second error. For me, that was untenable.
It was a concern for families, though, because they were aware of the foreigners being separated out from the Thais. They were also aware that bodies were being cremated. The concern was, how do I know that wasn't one of my loved ones? How do I know that it hasn't got caught up in a different process?
I was in the middle of nowhere. We don't know what happened, really. And I was naked, and I was so black because I got so much mud everywhere. It was like a nuclear bomb or something like that, you know? My first instinct was, where are they? We have to find them. I said, I'm gonna go where we were, to the hotel, or try to find something there, if they're there. So, but when I arrived there, it's like everything gone. There's no hotel anymore. I became obsessed about finding her any case. Going to hospital, every room, from 6 o'clock to midnight, doing that for days and days. I was really on a mission. My mission was, I need to find them. I need to find them. So we were doing hospital, but also we were doing temples.
I gradually got up and started shouting, just thought, surely someone's got to hear me, there's got to be someone there. I wanted to find Alice and Matt. So I started screaming for them. I started screaming for help. The whole top half of my right leg was open down to the bone. I saw two guys, and they stared back at me. I was covered in blood from head to toe. They picked me up, they carried me in kind of a fireman's lift. I told them about my mum and that I saw her body. Suddenly, Matt was there by my side, with a bandage around his head, but he was walking. Just knew that whatever was going to happen, it was going to be easier now. I couldn't work out where Alice had gone. I hadn't seen her since that first wave. And I thought she must be there somewhere, she must be. And maybe she's alive, maybe she's stranded.
Tận nhân cóได้กลับมาในน้ำเค็มครับมาดูที่บ้านเหลือครึ่งหนึ่งไปหมดแล้วไม่เหลืออะไรสักอย่างเดียวก็ไปเจอสภาพแบบเหมือนเดิมครับคนนอนตายเกลื่อนกลาดไม่ใส่เสื้อผ้าแต่ญาติคนที่เราตั้งใจจะหาก็ยังหาไม่เจอครับยังไม่พบไปครับไปทุกที่ครับที่มีข่าวว่าศพไปอยู่เขาพาศพไปไว้ที่นั่นทั้งวัดยันยาวทั้งวัดบางม่วงทั้งวัดน้ำเค็มแต่ก็ไม่เจอใครครับ
The bungalow where the kids were sleeping was leveled, you know. I found my suitcase, found Sally's suitcase. I mean, we found most of our stuff. But didn't find the kids. So I just prayed that they had survived and somebody had taken them to a hospital and, you know, they were safe.
A Thai woman came up who had been one of the women who cleaned at the resort, and she said, babies. So she just mimed that they were sleeping and the wave had come and had taken them. And, you know, and I said, did they get out? Did anybody warn them? And she didn't understand what I was saying, but so she just kept repeating, babies sleeping, and then doing the wave motion. And at that point, we both started crying because it was...
We just kept searching and searching and searching, and from dawn till dark.
Before there was some control, there were families going through piles of bodies, trying to find, you know, their loved one, and the despair and the desperation and the chaos, the screaming, the wailing. It was just an absolute, complete sensory overload.
I start looking at those dead bodies. If I find her, we never know. You got like hundreds of bodies. And for the babies, which I was sure about my daughter, she was dead, but I say I need to find her body also. So for the babies, they cover the face and everything. So you have to unwrap to see which baby was inside. So I unwrapped like so many of them.
They had lists that were missing people, lists that were coming from the hospital, and then they had lists that were for survivors. You would sign a missing person list and put everybody that you're missing, and then on the survivor list you put your name.
Everybody is trying to put photos on the board. Have you seen those people, you know? And yeah, and you hope you put in a number and you hope someone's gonna call you and say, I see this woman, I see that.
We just didn't know about Alice because we were told such conflicting information. During the time we were in hospital in Krabi, we were told my mum had died, but my sister was officially missing. We were then told that Alice was definitely dead. But then I was also down on a list as having died too. So it was all incredibly confused. Krabi Hospital was just packed full of people lying on the ground, crying. Part of my leg where they were sewing up, the anaesthetic didn't seem to have worked and I could just feel everything, and started screaming out for more, but they wouldn't give me any more. And all around me I could just hear people screaming and crying, and then I started screaming and crying, and it was just, yeah, it was just horrible. I knew how important it was to try and find them as quickly as possible and try and identify them. We felt very cut off from what was happening, but we had a television. We could see and understand more the fact that this had really been almost a global event, a global catastrophe that had happened.
Other foreign nations, they'd started to arrive and were looking for their own. So their process was they wanted to identify their own nationals.
Going and looking for only foreigner. How about the Thai people? We have to work as a team.
Everybody's been sent there by their government, and their job is to identify their citizens and return and repatriate their citizens. Now, you can't look at somebody and go, they're British. You know, we don't have the flag tattoo generally on any part of our body that allows you to do that.
You come from Asia, come from Europe, come from Australia, America, they look all same, because decomposing is a natural process and body change in the same way. Doesn't matter what color you have before or what religion, you know, what culture. It doesn't matter because the body decomposed in the same way.
But I think every police force that responded from around the world had that same
initial briefing. It was only when we got there and we saw the condition of the victims that we realised what a difficult task that was going to be.
Because in that heat and in that humidity and with the fly and maggot activity that's going on, then you can see identification disappearing in front of your eyes.
The more a body decomposes, you're losing forensic opportunities quite significantly.
The whole thing is about a race for time. We need to get these bodies cooled down. We need to slow decomposition. We need to halt it.
Get them frozen so we could preserve as much of the forensic evidence as we could.
And then the next stage was to be able to get what they call the reefers in, which are the refrigerated trucks.
Each nation has a way of doing business in their home nation. So when they come and deploy somewhere, they want to just do what they would normally do. But that's not possible in an international operation on this scale.
The team from many countries, they didn't want to work under the Australian authority. They tried to separate from the team and work alone in the other temple. And for our team, we have to control that because there was a different method, such as some team from Europe, they cut the hand.
Some teams, field teams, in some countries had, in the instances of identifying fingerprints, found it easier to remove the hands of victims in order to correctly roll a set of fingerprints to afford identification. Certainly, from a moral perspective, we had a problem with that. Now, we needed to issue very strong sanction because we wanted to ensure that everyone understood that if you came to Thailand and you joined the team, that you would operate to the protocols laid down by the Interpol compliant process.
So it was very, very soon clear that we cannot work just for our own victims.
I am the one who allow you to work and stop looking for only foreign bodies. If you don't want to listen, you have to go home.
On the 12th of January, we got agreement that it would be an integrated process. Separation of Thai and non-Thai would cease, and that all post-mortem information relating to deceased persons, whether they be Thai or non-Thai, would be combined and sent to the Information Management Centre in Phuket. It was absolutely pivotal that all countries that were involved had to put aside the fact that they were representing their own nation first. They had to put that aside and join the TTVI, the Thai Tsunami Victim Identification Operation. And if they agreed to that, then they agreed to a new protocol that we would identify all persons deceased in the tsunami, irrespective of race, creed or nationality.
We moved from this very difficult early stage to something which was more coherent, more sustainable. It was our best prospect of getting the results that everybody needed as far as identifying their family members and having them returned.
The mantra was, we will get them home. It was defining, I guess, the mission for the whole TTVI. We'll get everybody home. We're not just going to take some home, we want everyone home.
We turned their area where they prayed into a mortuary overnight. We left at 5 o'clock one night and nothing was done. We came back at 6 o'clock the next morning and there was basically 4 walls and a roof, and we were able to start doing the things we needed to do. It passed no building regulations, it passed no health inspection. By putting up boards, by installing air conditioning, by moving in the examination tables that us and other countries had brought in for them. But the Thais were very smart. They realised it was something they had to achieve, and they achieved it very, very well.
Within 1 week of the disaster, we had the first post-mortem examinations performed in that mortuary, which, given the scale, was quite extraordinary. The purpose of this examination wasn't to establish a cause of death. That was not an issue. But the purpose of the examination was to collect data that could be used to identify each individual body. But knowing that we've got literally thousands of bodies to go through, So you have to start somewhere. So the pressure is, yes, let's get it started.
The way in which it worked was just unique because it just brought 31 different nations into one room, into one office, into one process, and everybody worked alongside each other because we were all there for the same reason and we were all there for a common goal, and that was to identify the victims, return them back to their families, and try and help Thailand recover from the situation they found themselves in.
What I met in Thailand at the worst days of my life was all this kindness from the Thai people. I knew there was Thai people that have lost everything, not just relatives, but everything, homes, jobs, everything, and still they were helping the Western people. They were actually not of this world. For me, my daughters were alive. I wanted to go up and see with my own eyes what had happened up in Kalmar. At that moment, I realized if anyone has survived here, they were the lucky ones. I lost control over my body, actually. I couldn't move. It was like all the strength just left me. And then we left the day after, and I came out home without them.
ยังมีความหวังอยู่ความหวังว่าญาติของเรายังมีชีวิตอยู่แม่ของเรายังมีชีวิตอยู่ก็เลยสุดท้ายก็ค่อยๆหาค่อยๆเป็นค่อยๆไปหวังแต่ปาฏิหาริย์นะออกไปก็ไปที่โรงพยาบาลก็ได้ไปพบกับยายครับทั้งสมองและก็แขนหักครับถูกไม้ฟาดเข้าแขนหักต้องดีใจครับปลื้มจนน้ำตาไหลเลย
The British government had chartered a plane leaving Bangkok. I had to have some medical attention very quickly back in the UK. The moment that the plane left the tarmac, I just had a real feeling in my gut that it was just wrong, that why were we leaving when my mum and Alice were there somewhere? Why were we leaving them, and where was I going? Well, I was going home, but where was that to now?
I cover quite a lot of the area, and I don't see her name anywhere. I don't see her in any room in the hospital. After 2 weeks, got no chance. You know, I was sure I'd done everything to find them. I need to stop it, but I think it was my friends, and they realized I was getting a bit crazy, and I said, you have to go, you have to quit this. Because me, I want to stay there until I find them. But I was getting a bit without sleeping, you know. So I think that's why they put me on the plane. You know, I couldn't fight that.
I was told that Patrice needed to get back because of suicidal survivor's guilt, and it was very important that he would get back to Paris and be looked after medically. They put him in hospital for a couple of days to sleep because he needed to sleep. He he didn't want to sleep because he didn't want to close his eyes and have that vision again. But he kept saying he didn't think that Ruby had survived. That's what he kept saying to me. He didn't think that it was possible that she could have survived because he'd seen her go into a whirlpool. And he did say to me sometimes that he thought that Sam had given up because she'd seen her baby go. But I kept saying to him that I didn't believe that. I didn't think that she'd given up. I said she probably went down, because he said she went down under, and he said that was giving up. And I said, no, she probably went down to look for her child. Thoughts that Sam was alive. Well, she was bigger than life, and I think that's what most people would say. Somebody from the hotel in Cowlack had told me that they had seen a lady go up to the hills with a baby. She had long black hair and a baby, and that they'd seen her going up to the hills.
Really, sometimes you just say, okay, maybe there is a hope if she find her. You never know. Until you don't have the body, you never know, so.
I think the not knowing must be an awful thing, and particularly in these open disasters where there's always that nagging question in their mind, are they somewhere else, and have they just not come forward?
You know, we've tried to deceive ourselves sometimes, that if they hadn't been identified, they must be alive. Well, that's not necessarily the case.
We would continue to hold the belief that they were okay, that they had made it up the mountain, that they were in a camp somewhere, and that we would find them. We searched the lists. There was a dive shop there on the main street, and the dive shop had lists of people who were alive.
Yeah, we found my brother on a list at this dive shop.
Incredulous. It was just ecstatic, Oh, my God, thank you, God.
It was just such a relief. It was joy.
Well, his name was spelled correctly. And so that was a good sign, since we all have very different names. If it was spelled correctly, then he must be coherent enough to tell someone how to spell his name.
And so that became the mission then, was to go to the hospital where they said he was and find him.
And we wandered around looking for him and couldn't find him anywhere. We did find out that he had been moved to Phuket, so we went down to Phuket at that point. And when we got to the hospital there, they told us that he had checked himself out.
He had left against medical advice. And so we were left with the fear and the anxiety that he was wandering around Phuket, and we didn't know what kind of condition he was in.
We thought maybe he was just wandering around thinking that he didn't have any family anymore.
Couldn't find him. The U.S. Embassy in Washington had gotten a call from Jay from Bangkok Hospital in Bangkok. And he had been medevaced to Bangkok.
When I walked in the hospital room, he was sleeping, and I just stood there and watched him breathe. And then I went over and kissed him on the forehead. He opened his eyes and said, "Hi, Sal." And then I said, "Hi, sweetie, how you doing?" And then he said...
And I really think the only way that I survived it was I just knew that it wasn't my time to go. And I kept telling myself, like, this is not my time. This is not how I go. I can get through this. It's not my time. It's not my time. My sister, Collie, And she woke up and she just started screaming, "Oh my God, Jay, come look at this. You've got to see this. You've got to see this." And I really had no idea what it was. I was half asleep. All I was wearing was boxers. So I took my earplugs out. And then all of a sudden, through the palm trees, I saw this giant 30-foot wave coming like right at the bungalow. And at that point, I just said, "We have got to get the hell out of here." And I just ran for the door. And the glass shattered, and the whole thing was underwater. And I was underwater the second I opened the door, and just being tossed and turned. And I finally surfaced after about 30 seconds and realized I was still holding the earplugs that I had taken out of my head a few minutes ago, because I wouldn't even have been awake had my sister not woken me up. I had to deal with being injured at 16 with no money or passport and just a pair of boxers that I was wearing to my name.
And then he said, "How are Dad? How's Shanti?" And I said, "They're still in Calac, and they're looking for Kali." And he said, "She didn't make it." And I said, "Well, you know your father, and he will keep looking until he's decided that for himself."
I decided to fly straight away to Thailand to see if I could find them. I kept thinking that she was alive. I think, you know, it was too hard for me to even contemplate that she was dead. And so we were appointed 2 rangers and a driver. We went up into the hills. I was loaded with photocopies of a photo of Sam and Ruby.
Miles away from Thailand's beaches, Natalie Archer is on the loneliest of searches. She's been told her missing sister Sam and baby niece Ruby Rose might have been spotted walking into the hills. For weeks, she's been trying to find them.
Until a body or the DNAs have been done, then I think that I will, carry on believing. After I think the 2nd or the 3rd day, we'd walked, and then they said, "That's it, that's finished." And, I just burst into tears and told them that I knew that she was out there somewhere and that they had to help me. And I took these maps and said, "I don't think you've taken me here," which was the immediate mountain hill above, more or less, where their resort was. When we came back down and we hadn't found anything or anybody, I just felt the whole time that everybody would see. I kept saying, "You'll all see, I'm right."
Phuket was a holiday destination with a lot of families and a lot of young children, from very, very young, from a few months old right up and through teenagers.
These families are absolutely devastated, and you really want to try and protect your people from being exposed to something which is too real, because it makes it very hard for them emotionally to deal with their work. But when you actually start to personally connect with their grief and their loss, that's really hard. I don't think there was anybody that I worked with that didn't connect.
Very early in the piece, one of my team came to me, and I was quite surprised about it, but she came to me and she said, "Boss, we'd like to do all the kids first. Can we work through the children and get the children all done? Once the anti-mortem information comes in, we'll have that post-mortem information for all the children, and perhaps they can be some of the first identified."
What we always think about in a mass fatality event is the mortuary and the deceased and identifying the deceased, but it's only one half of an equation. There is a complete other half of the equation, because disaster victim identification is about matching information. The body gives us the information in the post-mortem examination, we need to record that. But we also need to have information to match it to, and that's the ante-mortem information.
We have to collect as much information we can on every single body and hope that some of it we collect will match something from the post-mortem information. And it may be a dental record, or it may be a fingerprint record, or it may be the DNA profile. The difficulty is collecting the information about the missing persons, is the fact that we have to go to some village in the far north of Norway because there's a couple who've been on holiday from some village in the far north of Norway who happen to have died in Phuket.
Vi fikk henvendelse fra Kripos, hvor vi fikk beskjed om at vi hadde et barn som var savnet i Thailand. Og i og med at han var et lite barn, så det litt vanskelig å tannlegeopplysninger. De har ikke vært hos tannlege, så dermed så har du ikke det. Og da var det å innhente opplysninger på DNA, vi må med foto, fingeravtrykk.
I managed to hold him as we were tossed around under the water. Eventually we reached the surface, and I was still holding him with both hands. And I remember that we were traveling inland in a speed of 45 kilometers per hour. And I remember the palm trees sticking up like small bushes. I tried to hold him with both hands and still pedal with my feet in order to keep us both at the surface. But I was constantly pulled down by the water, and when I also pulled him down with me. So I tried to change grip and just take his one arm. In that way I could have one arm to pedal better and also to push him up and keep him at the surface as we were flushed inland. But he had sun lotion on his arm, and so I lost him. He was only 2 years and 8 months old when this happened. Of course, we searched for him in case of he being alive and well somewhere. We stayed on. We felt that we had brought Ragnar to the other side of the world. We couldn't leave him there.
Finne eventuelt fingeravtrykk, DNA fra Ragnar. Så jeg dro hjem til dem og prøvde å pensle fingeravtrykk på plasser som han har vært, sånn som TV, på lave plasser i huset hvor jeg kunne se at han hadde vært, og spesielt TV-en, og var inne på badet, dusjkabinett, prøvde å pensle fottøyavtrykk på flisegolv på bad, og da siklet jeg en smokk og en hårbørste og tannbørste.
Children are inherently difficult in any mass fatality incident. They generally don't have dental records or not any significant, particularly if they're young babies. Trying to recover babies' ante-mortem fingerprints is extremely difficult, and of course the same would apply to DNA.
Så måtte vi tenke litt kreativt. I barnehagen så tar de jo avtrykk av hender og føtter i maling, og da hadde de faktisk i barnehagen et bilde hvor vi hadde fotavtrykket til Ragnar. Og det tok jeg med meg også tilbake og sendte det til Kripos, og det tok jo veldig lang tid.
You don't get an idea of the children very quickly. You have to wait. Then again, I think the human mind, with a mother or father or grandmother and grandfather, will start to spin on, did she suffer? Did she have pain? Is she crying out?
Not knowing. You go from hope to despair, maybe many times every hour or every day. And it's very hard to relate to because you don't know. and there is nothing you can do about it.
Och återkommande frågan var ju ofta när det gällde barn. När tror ni att våra barn kommer tillbaks? Och vi kunde ju inte veta det. Vi kunde ju bara säga att man jobbar så gott man kunde. Och
จนกว่าจะพบสมาชิกครอบครัวทั้งหมดครับเพราะแม่นี่จะเป็นคนที่เจอช้ากว่าเพื่อนครับตอนเจอก็เหลือแต่กระดูกหมดทวงครับหมดทวงอยากให้เขาพบพระได้ยินเสียงพระสวดก่อนจะไปครับไม่อยากให้เขาวนเวียนอยู่ในน้ำเค็มรู้สึกโชคดีมากๆครับที่ยังเหลือยายอีกหนึ่งคนที่ยังอยู่กับเราที่ยังอยู่เคียงข้างเราถ้าผมไม่มียายก็
Now, the problem with regards to the Thai victims was that quite often whole families were killed in the tsunami. So you couldn't get necessarily the same degree of antemortem data that you would have got, say, from Europe.
Not only were we dealing with the recovered deceased victims, but there was an enormous amount of property that was also recovered. And that led to another operation in its own right.
I don't know what was more bad, working at the bodies or with the property, because I think the property was like a surprise bag. Every bag you opened, you didn't know what was inside. Was it a finger with a ring, or was it a skull with something in the hair?
I think the first thing that we got news back in Sydney was they'd found some personal effects. Christian's, a bag and part of a passport, part of a phone.
We take off all clothing because the brand, the name, can give us some information. Maybe this brand from underwear come from Sweden. So we cleaned it. We had a dirty area with high pressure water, and people cleaned. But you can see also the power of the tsunami. If you see, the power of these waves, you can see on the item, watches destroyed, glass destroyed, telephones broken, credit cards broken, glasses. It costs a lot of money and manpower, but at the end, people who lost their loved ones get something back.
Well, when Christian was married, as part of the service, the wedding rings were put onto a table and they were passed amongst all the guests to touch and bless and pass them on. And I did ask whether my son's wedding ring had been found. They said no.
So when we got the initial news that there were personal effects had been found, but there was no body, we still held out obviously some hope. It took 5 months for confirmation that that body was Christian. So it was May 2005. Moy, she was identified earlier, a lot earlier actually, in February. It was difficult to receive that information, but in other ways it was almost helpful because the limbo is so excruciating that once you know, you can then deal with or process. And we needed that confirmation because otherwise you can't put any parameters around it. You can't grieve properly. You can't deal with it.
And when the belongings were given to me at Sydney Airport by the Federal Police, I happened to look at them all and then I ran my hand through the seam of the bag, and there, locked in the seam, was the wedding ring. And of course I wear that today as part of my reminder of him and him still being with me. I rejoice in having that and having him as a part of the remaining journey that I have to make.
In the property, many people think this is a part of the soul of the lost relative, you know.
I think that importance of there's a body, you want to honour that body of your loved one and make sure its journey is done respectfully and with honour.
And each item tell you a story, finally. Shows you the last second, or last 10 seconds of this human.
And they would photograph rings, clothing, and scars. And so you'd have a sheet of 4 or 5 pictures of this body with a number.
And so instead of looking at the bodies at this point, we were just looking at a wall of images.
Shanti found Kali's picture on the board.
Dad, this is her. This is her shirt, the one that she bought.
Oh my God.
No doubt in my mind it was her.
Look, I can't even talk about the boards. So. Well, you knew it was there. I don't remember ever breaking down because of what we were doing operationally, but I do remember getting very upset about the kind of, you know, when you think too much about the personal loss that people are having.
After 7 months, we were pretty convinced that he actually had died. When they came and informed us that Ragnar was identified, it was sad information because it meant that all hope of finding him alive was gone, but also a relief.
Ragnar ble identifisert på DNA, og det fotavtrykket som var på den smokken, der fikk vi DNA-profil. Og vi har papillarlinje.
We then knew what had happened, and we also had the opportunity to take him home and give him his final resting place here at home.
Every identification that was made, in its own way, was celebrated. Because it was celebrated because it was part of the success story of what we were trying to achieve. But for thousands of identifications that we made, one mistake would undo all of that. And to my knowledge, there were 2 separate incidents where identification mistakes were made. A Dutch male that was identified as a French male. I always remember the mother of that Dutch man coming out Phuket with her family just to ask us what went wrong. We took them all the way around the operation. We explained to them how the mistake had taken place. But for me to look that mother in the eye at that particular time and tell her how sorry we were, but we'd made a mistake, is probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Because I looked directly into her eyes. And for me, that was a situation that should never have arisen. It arose due to an administrative mistake. A set of fingerprints was filed in the wrong file.
I never think in Thailand. I have no time for thinking about all these bad images I have in my head. When you come home, then all of a sudden, you know, something is different. Yeah. Then you have time to think about that, what happened in the last 12 months. I was thinking too much sometimes about how does the family feel now. I couldn't switch off. And after 1 year, my body collapsed. Diagnosed it was a post-traumatic stress disorder. And this took me to hospital for 7.5 months to recover. I think this was the main problem, because when you work under these circumstances for a long time, suffer with the relatives or be sad and like the relative, this makes you sad and sick afterwards. It's my story and it makes me proud too. Before you would do this again, I say yes. Even though I know maybe I become sick afterwards. I would do this again.
We were told by a Australian pathologist, wonderful man, I can't remember his name, but that he had absolute certainty that the body in this casket was Kali from her dental records. He encouraged us not to look.
But for myself personally, I would have wanted to look at the remains. I think not viewing the body or the remains there could have been anybody in that coffin.
The last time I saw them were in Sweden when they were jumping into the taxi going to Thailand. And here I stood in front of a white coffin. And when it came to my own daughters, I told them I have to see them. I can't stand at the white coffin and you telling me this is my daughter. And they really, at first, they really didn't want me to see them because they weren't sure I would make it.
Så skulle hon nog göra det. Vi avrådde ju oftast det för att under de här omständigheterna som offren i tsunamin hade gått bort så var inte kropparna i samma kondition.
Swedish police, they actually brought me pictures of her before, so I could look at them before I met her to prepare myself. And I mean, it wasn't so much left of them, but I could recognize my daughters. And actually Eleanor had my bikini on, still my bikini on the pictures, not when I saw them.
Man kan tyvärr inte ångra sig, man får oftast en chans. Så om Susanne verkligen ville se sina döttrar. Jag lärde mig någon sak också i det här, hur man ska göra, för tyvärr så när någon har avlidit och vad man vill göra då, om man vill se ens nära eller inte.
Just skeleton left. But you know, if you're a mother, you recognize the bone, the hip bones, you can see that it's your kid. And people, they told me you should remember them as they was and blah, blah, blah. I still remember them as they was, because that was, for me, it was a little bit, okay, it's them, but they are not here any longer. I couldn't save them, but at least I could be with them until the end, kind of, for me.
Until I didn't find Sam's body, sometimes I was thinking, maybe she's alive, someone just grab her and save her, you know? So I think it's really important that people knows straight on what's happened with the bodies, and the identification should be really efficient.
When they found the body and they told us that they'd autopsied it and showed me the proof, and I didn't believe them because It wasn't like seeing a photocopy. It was like, well, this is a dental record from her dentist, and this is the dental record from the corpse, and they were completely different. So I was going, you're trying to make me believe you, but you're showing me something that, you know, I'm not a forensic and I haven't studied forensic science, but I can't believe you now with what you're showing me.
It wasn't until the 19th of February that the post-mortem took place. By that time, they had actually got the odontograms and the fingerprints, and they used that to identify Sam positively together with the jewellery.
Straight on, I saw a watch and a ring, so I say for sure it's her now.
And it was so obvious to everyone around the table that it was an exact match, but she couldn't take it in. She couldn't accept it. And she ran out of the room saying, no, it's not my sister. So I had to go out and actually just cuddle her and say, we have got to accept this. This is Sam.
All your illusions have been shattered. I think I just ran out into the street, cried and. Because I think grief within a family is always very difficult, and it usually either brings you together or tears you apart. Even though I wasn't actually in the tsunami, I did have awful guilt. I felt like it should have been me, it shouldn't have been her.
And I start drinking, taking drugs. It took me 8 years to deal with and face what happened to me. When I stopped drinking and taking drugs and I see a therapist, now it's hard. And I'm lucky I've got a new wife and a new baby, so I'm not alone, and they help me, but it's not easy every day. This little thing, she's 4 months and she's beautiful, so I have to fight for her. I have to be here for her.
And why wasn't Alice found? It didn't make sense. Everything else seemed to have got washed up or have reached a beach eventually, but why didn't Alice? What happened? Maybe she'd lost her memory. Maybe she'd been misidentified. I would see people walking down the street who looked like her height, walked in the same way. It still feels unfinished. She's still here with me.
If you never get that body back, then you speak to families who have a missing person, they talk about their life going into a stutter, that they just can't get beyond there because they don't know. And it's the not knowing of where they are and what happened to them that causes this gaping hole. There's no closure.
So that whole notion of identity is one that is dear to the human condition, and that is why it has to be treated with such respect and dignity. It's the only dignity we can offer a family who've lost someone that they loved is, well, here is your loved one back, and this is their name.